Okay. Did he send a voting page? Where is it?
Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, he sent it earlier today, unless you just got left off the list.
Yeah, he might have. Did he send it to me, the voting page? Because I'm not seeing it.
It's from at 10:54.
AM?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you are totally not on this list.
I got it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, all right. Are we ready? Is everybody? Okay, it looks like we are. Okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. The time is now 5:51. Sorry, we're starting a little late, a few technical glitches, but I think we'll make it before 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, and if everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Matthey,
Here.
trustee Bolin, trustee Montney,
Here.
trustee Emig,
Here.
trustee Becker,
Here.
trustee Urban,
Here.
trustee Ward,
Here.
trustee Crable,
Here.
trustee Crumpler,
Here.
trustee Milwambwe.
Here. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda that anybody would like to have removed? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, motion by
Second.
trustee Bolin, second by trustee Becker, who raised his hand. So if you guys can go ahead and vote.
Trustee Bolin, can you refresh, please? All right, do you vote for or against this item? Okay, sounds great. We're all good.
Okay, well, all right, okay. So the consent agenda passes, there are no nays to announce. Next item on the agenda is a request for proposal for professional audit services, and the recommendation is that the RFP for proposal professional audit services be awarded to Phillips and Associates CPAs for the fiscal years 2022, 2023, 2024, with an option of auditing financial statements for the fiscal years 2025 and 2026 at the request of Township at an annual cost to the Township and Evergreen Memorial Cemetery as listed in Appendix A fee proposal, and for the Township supervisor to be authorized to enter into the standard engagement letter with Phillips and Associates. Any comments? Supervisor Skilwood?
I move to approve.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you have any comments?
No,
No?
I don't. have
Okay,
any
thank you.
comments. I'm sorry. Was that
Okay.
directed to me? I apologize.
Okay, yep. Okay, motion by trustee Craybill, second by trustee Matthey. If you would go ahead and, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, go ahead, let's go.
Sorry, I know we're supposed to be going fast,
No,
but
it's all right.
this one and the next one both talk about 5-year agreements. And I'm questioning out clauses because I believe that there are some opportunities as we go forward and something that we're going to be discussing, or at least I want to be discussing, about combining services and vendors with the city to find some efficiencies. Is it prudent to enter into these 5-year agreements now? What are the out clauses? Because I don't think it makes sense if we're going to look at, can we be efficient and use the same.
That's the
vendors as
first that I've
city?
heard that we're looking at combining the two together potentially. So we moved forward with this to, keep things moving with the township. So I think that may take a little time. I don't know what the out clause says. I can get back with you on that, and discuss that with you.
I don't think we should, well, my opinion is I won't vote yes for this if I don't know what the out clause is, because I think it's not prudent for a 5-year agreement or the next one.
Well, it's a 3-year agreement with options to more.
Either way.
Would you be okay with if we changed it to table till the next meeting and get that information? Is there any reason why that would cause an issue?
I don't believe so.
Are you okay with that as the person?
The second maker of the motion?
Yes, I'm agreeable to that.
Okay, to table. Okay. What about the seconder?
That was me. I'm
Okay, that was-
good with
okay.
that too.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
So we still need to, we have to vote on that?
Yeah, we have to vote on it.
Give me just 1 second.
So motion is to table to the next meeting. Does that sound okay? Deb, is that good?
Yes,
Okay. If you can go ahead and vote. Okay, the motion passes. No nays to announce. Next item on the agenda is a request for proposal for cleaning services, and the recommendation is for the RFP for cleaning services to be awarded to Soaring Eagle Cleaning Services for calendar years 2022, 2023, 2024, with an option of renewing for calendar years 2025 and 2026 at the request of the township at an annual cost to the township listed in Appendix A. Is there a motion?
Can we table this one as well for the same reason? Or that's my motion.
That's your motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by trustee Matthew. Go.
I had a
Discussion?
comment.
Okay, sure.
So, Nick, so the purpose of the tabling of the last one was because the city and township do auditing services, right? I'm not sure, does the city have cleaning services or do we do it ourselves?
I do believe so. Yes, there's a cleaning service. as
Okay,
well.
all right, just wanted to check on that.
Okay. Okay. Okay, if you want to go ahead and vote. Okay, the item passes as 1 nay to announce, Madam Clerk.
Trustee Urban.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is reports by elected officials, and starting with Supervisor Skillroot.
I don't really have anything to report other than what's in my supervisor's report. If you have questions regarding that, I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the next report by Township Assessor.
Yeah, I'm on the same with Deb. If you have any questions, you have my report in front of you, but I do want to leave with understanding that the sale prices that are coming in are a lot higher than a lot of the assessments. So there may be a large increase in assessed values coming in the future. So I just wanted to make the board aware of those issues.
Okay,
Just a quick comment.
yeah, sure. Comment by trustee Matthew.
I just want to say thank you for including that your report that says there's 131 new construction residential permits that are open right now. So that's good information. Thank you for including that.
Okay, trustee Botany.
I'd just like to ask if you have any even directional estimate as to the amount of the increases?
We're just finishing up the board this week, so we haven't got the finalized assessments back from the county. Once we get those, we'll start running ratios, but we're seeing large increase for this 2021 year. And we're gonna lose the 2018 year will fall off of our 3-year average, which was kind of tight. So the increase on this end is going to spike the assessments a little higher. If that makes any sense.
So the implications for that, I know we have a large group here today. The implications for that on our taxpayers from a property tax standpoint.
It'll affect your assessments, which is in correlation with your tax bill, but as long as there's no increase in levies on the taxing body side, then your assessments and the increase in properties coming on board with 131 new construction. So it could level out, but no way of telling completely how it'll work
Thank you.
until closer to that time.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments, Madam Clerk?
We did not receive any public comment.
Okay, thank you. At this point, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to
Okay,
adjourn.
trustee Boland, second. Is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Matthew, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned, so please do not move. We're going to go ahead and start the next meeting shortly. The meeting of the City of Bloomington Council to order. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matthew,
Here.
Councilmember Boland,
Here.
Councilmember Motney,
Here.
Councilmember Emig,
Present.
Councilmember Becker,
Here.
Councilmember Urban,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Crable,
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler,
Here.
Mayor Millawamble.
Here. Next item on the agenda under recognition, we do have a proclamation in memory of Barb J. Atkins as requested by the Administration Department. And I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. I believe Diane Atkins is here. Is she? She has not. Okay, all right. Well, do you want to read the other one first?
That's what I was gonna say. If we want to jump to the Grand Cafe one, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm gonna try to read very slowly. Okay, so we have a proclamation here recognizing Grand Cafe's 100-year anniversary as requested by the administration department. And I do believe we have a couple of our friends from Grand Cafe in the back. And who would we want to step forward? Jimmy, I think Jimmy is going to step forward. We can get a couple people to step forward if. Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation and then I'll give you a chance to say a couple of words. Does that sound okay? All right, awesome. Whereas the city of Bloomington appreciates its diverse restaurant scene, which contributes to the vibrancy of our community, and whereas we recognize that many of our beloved establishments have rich histories going back generations, and whereas we are pleased to celebrate with the Grand Cafe as it marks its centennial anniversary in the city of Bloomington. And whereas we congratulate current owners, Jimmy and Kelly Mapuge, as they build on the tradition that began in 1921 when Bing Charlie Lum bought the Grand Inn Chop Suey Cafe located on North Center Street above a shoe store where it remained until 1948. And whereas the popular restaurant moved to other locations in Bloomington through the years, guided by 4 generations of the Lum Chu family who owned and operated the Grand Cafe until 2017, when the Mapuge family purchased the restaurant. And whereas the Grand Cafe continues today with its traditional Chinese menu, including those famous egg rolls, and has added Filipino cuisine that is attracting a new following. And now, therefore, I, Mboka Malambwe, Mayor of the City of Bloomington and lover of egg rolls, do hereby recognize 2021 as Grand Cafe's 100-year anniversary and congratulate all involved in this achievement. Congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
Yep. Thank you very much, Mayor. And also, I'd like to thank my friend here, Ike. Let me tell you about a short story about this Grand Cafe. I'm a realtor by trade, and I was selling the Grand Cafe for Ike, because he went to a corporate world. But unfortunately, selling it, it didn't sell. So he was going to close it. He says, well, I have my job. I have to close it. So I said, Ike, why don't you give me a deal? Let me buy it. And he looked at me, I'm like crazy. He said, are you crazy? You don't even have, restaurant experience. I said, well, if the cook stays and the front of the house stays, the rest I can Google. And that's what exactly I did. So 4 years, 2017 is when I bought it, and now it's 2021. It's thriving. And Ike, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Jimmy, thank you. You saved me of the servitude that I had given to the Grand Cafe. So my family appreciates everything that you have done. You've carried on the legacy greatly, and my family is very thankful and proud of you.
Thank you very much. And I was saying, this one I'm gonna give it to the city of Bloomington. Thank you, city of Bloomington, for 100 years of great support. Here's to 100 more. Thank you very much.
We do have the proclamations here.
Okay.
This one is for Jimmy, and then this one is for the rest of the family members. Okay. Thank you, thank you. Yep. The other one. The other one is yours, the one that has your name on it. Okay, okay, awesome, thank you. Okay, okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. Leslie,
I
what
was just
about,
gonna say, you could actually just bump it to further down the agenda if you'd like to do that and do it once she arrives.
sure, okay. What about the egg rolls?
Sorry, it is kind of,
Okay.
let me,
Sure.
sorry, it is kind of a funny one. Jimmy had contacted us and asked if he could also bring egg rolls to the meeting. And so he does have those available with separate serving dishes at the end of the meeting if some, for everyone to grab on their way out.
Yeah, awesome,
And
awesome.
thank you.
Now we'll see who's gonna leave early. Thank you very much, Jimmy. Okay.
So with the other proclamation, there's no motion that's necessary. We
Right.
can just move it till later and you can continue.
Okay, sounds good. Yep. I think that'd be great, so she can be here. We'll do that. Yes. Okay, our next item on the agenda, which I don't think we can top that. It's all down here from here. Is public comment.
All right, so we did receive several emailed public comment from Ricky Lee Beneke, Keith Molddown, Craig Ryan, Amanda Weiss, Rochelle Gridley, Diane Mather, and Neil Gridley. And then we have two people present, Gary Lambert and Willie Holton Halbert, who would like to speak in person.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yes, I guess that's my cue. I'm still focused on the egg rolls. Sorry. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It is also an opportunity for the city council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased. Okay, okay.
Gary Lambert.
Good evening. I am Gary Lambert. I read in the newspaper last week that the good news that the library has received something approaching $6 million in a grant from the Library Construction Fund or some such thing. Then I read further on the article that, gee, why don't we just increase the size of the project from 22 million to 25 million? So all the goodness of their heart, they said, well, we'll just split it. We'll add on the 3 million to get to where we really wanted to be to begin with. and we'll reduce the borrowing by that 3 million, more or less. Had it all gone to the construction, we would have been borrowing 11, 12, 13, I don't know what. Something less than the 14 that's being proposed for tonight's action, I believe. Something to consider. Usually I don't have any humor. I'm going to attempt tonight. A number of years ago, I believe Mboku was in office then, we had a temporary tax of 0.25% sales tax. I think it was for the BCPA, but I might be wrong on it. And as it came up for vote, everybody was laughing and joking how silly that was. Of course, I don't know if it was unanimous to make it a permanent tax or not. Something for the council to consider. When this bond for the library construction is paid off, it would be nice to put something in. I know it's not legally binding on teachers, but it's the intent of the council for the tax increase to roll back to what it was before this increase. Somehow get out of the cycle of ever increasing taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next.
Next up, we have Willie Holton Halbert.
Say good evening to everyone, to our mayor, to the city council persons, especially to my city council rep, Motley. Glad to see you from Ward 3. I've lived in this community, most people know, for over 40 years. My children all grew up and are grown and have moved away. And initially, when you hear about the taxes being raised to approximately $30 and $22 million for the extension, your eyebrow kind of raised and you think, wow. But when you think about the resources and the number of people that are being served, you settle down and you realize this is something that is very well needed. My children made many trips here to the library. We had several programs and events. I worked with various groups within the community that we utilized the large room that was for 100 people. Many times we would call and of course it would be booked and we would not be able to have use of that facility. Well, with all the various expansions, that would go from 1 to 3 rooms of 100 people, which would be 300, we will allow more time and space for people to utilize. In addition to that, as you look at the expansion, you think about, we have approximately 80,000 people within the city of Bloomington. And for the amount of space that we're adding, approximately 2,400 square feet, in comparison to some of our surrounding areas, we found that we are, even with the expansion, we're still below what they have for their average. In Champaign, they have approximately 102,000 square feet with a population of 91,000. Decatur, 140,000 square feet approximately, with approximate population of 70,000. So even with our improvements and expansion, there are still vast discrepancies. So we are overdue for this expansion. If we look at all the benefits that, as far as the educational benefits of enlarging children programming, computer lab, having space for people to go to who don't have computers at home but can utilize it within our system. The library is also centrally located, and even for people on the west side, which have limited amount of services available to them, this resource is very helpful. So more importantly, our community needs this expansion. I have a great granddaughter, Riley Rose, that's only 2 years old, and I look forward to bringing her many, many occasions to the library, to the resources, being able for our community to have a place where we can go and have meetings there, innovation labs for our youth. It's for our community. It's not a want, it is a need, and I hope that we will pass this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Willie.
That's all that we have.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items that members of the council would like to have removed? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
I will make the motion to approve the consent. agenda.
Okay, motion by Councilmember
I'll second.
Bolin and second by Councilmember Motney. I think if she raised her hand.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. If you want to go ahead and vote. Okay, the consent agenda passes. There are no nays to announce. Next item on the agenda is, on the regular agenda is item A, consideration and action on one, an ordinance levy, levying taxes for the city of Bloomington, McLean County, Illinois, for the fiscal year beginning May 2021 and ending April 30th, 2022. And also another ordinance levying taxes for the city of Bloomington Public Library for the same fiscal year, 2021, beginning May 2021, and also ending April 30th, 2022. So I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason for some introductory comments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Very brief comments. This is a conversation that we've had with the community over the past couple of months. Tonight is the night that council has before them both as action items. I'm going to turn this over for a brief presentation to Finance Director Scott Rathman. Scott.
Thank you, City Manager Gleason. Mayor, Council, before you tonight is the proposal for the final levy for the tax year 2021 for our fiscal 2023 budget. As been discussed in previous council meetings, on the previous council meeting with the public hearing, there's been an amendment between the estimated levy for the Bloomington Public Library related to the state grant that was awarded. So the bond was reduced from 17 million to 14.2 million, and there was a subsequent reduction in the amount of levy needed for the debt service of 250,000. So we'll be covering that this evening. Next slide, please. So in the form of a review, the tax levy is a total dollar amount in taxes adopted by each taxing body. So again, tonight is the levy for the city and the levy for the Bloomington Public Library. The tax levy is a dollar amount divided by the total equalized assessed valuation. So the rate is basically a calculation of the total amount of levy that is requested divided into the EAV for the taxing area. So the EAV is essentially 1/3 of the fully assessed value of a property. So at the bottom of this exhibit, we're providing examples of property values that range from $100,000 up to $1 million. I'm kind of jumping to the end, showing the total combined tax levy rate for the city and the library of approximately 1.34%, which was during the estimated levy was 1.4%, and showing those related tax amounts. The change for the library, since we've been discussing that recently, $165,000 during the estimate, the increase equated to about a $30 increase per house value to $165,000, with the reduction that's come down to $22. So I don't have it up on the exhibit here, but for a $100,000 house, that'd be a $14 increase. For a $165,000 house, a $22 increase, $27 for $200,000, $41 for $300,000, and $136 for $1 million assessed property. Next slide, please. Just a review quickly on the equalized assessed value historicals and the increases, kind of jumping down to the right, bottom right corner there. You can see the estimated EAV is about a 2.25% increase over 2020. Now we have not recommended increases related to the EAV, the value capture on the levy for the city and the library. close to 2.25%. We're actually just looking at 1.33% increase for the city, which was a $275,000 value capture on the levy, and then $50,000 for the library. Next slide, please. So from a high level, the full levy that is being proposed for adoption, the city is 20.9 million, 1.0838%, no change from the estimate. The library at 5.9 million, 0.3040%. We've reduced that by $250,000 from the estimate that was proposed on November 22nd, which showed the library being at 6.1 million roughly and a 0.31695% rate. Next slide, please. So this is the history of the city and the library levy dollar amounts and the rates. I'm just going to jump down to the rate section. You can see the city has pretty much hovered right at that 1.08% range. You can look at the 2020 to the 2021. It's actually showing a slight reduction. Well, we're anticipating the EAV coming down slightly, so we want the adoption to be a little lower. So with that reduction in EAV, it'll be more like in that upper 1.08% range. And then the library, you can see it's been averaging 0.26% over history. And then with the increase for the debt service of the 850,000, it's bumped up to 0.304%. So a combined tax rate for the city and the library of roughly 1.39%, up from the 1.36 in the prior year. Next slide, please. This is just a visual representation of the allocation of levy. There's no change on this exhibit from the estimate, but just wanted to provide it again for the community so they can kind of see in general where the largest dollar allocations are located. And primarily the biggest sections of this are for the police and fire, or public safety, excuse me, and the library. And next slide, please. And then this is the allocation of the total taxing district. This is an estimate. We don't know where the finals are going to be for these other entities, but you can see that the city and the library are still, the city's at roughly 13 cents or 13% of the total property tax bill for the resident of the area, and the library approximately 3% or 3 cents out of a dollar. And next slide, please. So at this point in time, I'd just like to recommend that the final 2021 tax levy be approved and be open to taking any questions for discussion.
Are there questions or motion or? Councilmember Bolin?
Yeah, I have a question. Can this vote be separated? Because I know that there's some, many comments on one side and the other side,
Sure.
or does it need to be voted on as a lump?
Can a couple of you turn off your mic so Jeff can?
Yeah, so there's just a recommended motion to
Mhm.
do it as one, but if you want to make a motion to approve one of them first, then that is fine. And so, for example, if you made a motion to approve the city tax levy, and that got a second, then you could vote on that. Then the library tax levy would be the next ordinance you would take up.
I'd like to make a motion to vote on the city tax levy first.
Okay,
To approve the city tax levy.
yeah.
Correct.
Is there a second then?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Motney. I'm assuming no discussion. Is there no additional discussion? Because we've discussed this ad nauseum.
I do have one question.
Sure.
You mentioned, I think, that the equalized assessed valuation, you were anticipating it decreasing. I may have misunderstood, but in the township meeting immediately preceding this, it sounded like it might be substantially increasing.
I believe he was
next year.
referencing like reassessments. And so these assessments are locked in at this point in time, but there will be tax challenges coming forward. They're still being reviewed. And plus there's some exemptions that get logged for disabled veterans and those kinds of things that adjust the prelim to the final. And we get the prelim late September, early October, and within that 1 to 2 month period, there's those reductions related to that activity.
What would be the implications for the public, if any?
The implication, since we're asking for, it's almost like a mathematical formula. We're asking for a certain dollar amount. And then if the total EAV drops, the rate that's applied to everyone's property values will move. So if the EAV were to come down a lot, the rate, the calculated rate would go up, and then theoretically, depending on your property value, your tax amount would fluctuate depending on that.
Are there other questions or?
Yeah, I just need some clarification
Sure.
because it sounded like that was a question about the library and I thought we were discussing and voting on the city. So I wonder if we could,
No, I think she was
Stick to
talking
one.
about everything, right?
It applies to both.
Okay.
That's my question. That's why I asked it now.
Councilmember Kribel?
Thanks, Mayor. And just so I understand, Scott, you're in the rate that you've given, you're anticipating that the EAV will drop. So you're being conservative, I guess, and anticipating that.
That's correct. That's why when you look at that historical rate exhibit, it actually shows that the rate we're proposing is slightly lower than last year, but we're anticipating the EAV to drop slightly, which will bring the rate theoretically to be even with what it was last year.
And this maybe is more of a question for the assessor, but I think you may know. So the assessor talked about potentially a person's house being assessed at a higher rate. But you have to counter that with if there are additional properties added,
Yes.
that may net it out, right?
That's
Because
the
that
hope.
would just add to the total EAV.
Right.
And ultimately, someone's individual taxes may not go up depending on how many properties are added to the tax roll.
That's correct. That we sort of referenced that in the previous, during the estimate, where we're hoping that the tax base broadens as opposed to just values going up kind of vertically, so that everyone's, with the addition of the building permits that we're seeing, new housing, that kinds of things, that looks like it's taking shape as well.
Thank you.
Councilmember Emig?
Thank you, Mayor. This may not be appropriate for now. It's a question about the library grant that was received. Should I go ahead and ask it?
Let's just wait till the next.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and vote. Okay. So the item passes, no nays to announce. So now we can talk about the library.
Mayor, I'll move that we approve the library levy as presented.
second,
Okay, so moved by Councilmember Matthews, second by Councilmember Ward. Now discussion, Councilmember Emig.
Yes. So my understanding is that the grant that was awarded was based on an initial quote that was more costly than at the end amount that we're being asked to spend. And that the grant is contingent on the levy passing. And at that level, one reason why some costs were not reinstated was so that we would still be eligible for that grant. In other words, the costs have not been dramatically reduced because in order to be eligible for the grant at all, we have to honor the original quote.
So the grant application was based on the project cost of 20 million. And that was, the application was submitted pre-July, which is when we received a higher cost estimate. So unfortunately, we can't go back and ask for more money from the state. But the grant then does require a $15 million match at least from the city, or, from our funds. And so then we also, on top of that 15, have to make up any cost increases since that initial application that we've learned about.
Thank you.
Could I ask a follow-up to that? just in reading the information that was circulated to us and to Julie's question, does the term of the grant prohibit you from using all of the grant toward reducing the taxpayer burden in this? Could all of the grant be used? As I read the interior emails, it implied that we were going to use 50% to hedge against increasing costs and also to potentially add back amenities that had been removed from the proposal.
Yes, so what would prohibit, the grant doesn't prohibit us from reducing local contributions. We have to do the $15 million match is what the specifications of the grant are. But that being said, we always, part of the library's commitment to the project included grants and donations. So if all of this money were applied to reduce the bond, then we're essentially double counting the money because the library, that was part of the library's commitment too. And then yes, we did, the cost estimate came in much higher. So we had to reduce the project by about, I want to say $6 million in July. And we had hoped that we would always be able to come back and add some of the things. We chose to strategically focus on things that were fixed construction because you can't ever come back and add to the core of the building, or it's a lot harder to add hard construction costs back. So we had strategically cut things like furniture and shelving, things that are more movable, because those can come back and add. So we had hoped to fundraise enough to cover those costs. And this grant allows for that to cover that.
And in fact, you'll all remember that part of that in this process, going back and forth with the council, we'd initially said, okay, the one thing that we might be able to cut is the parking, and the council overwhelmingly came back and said, yes, you've got to add the parking. You must have the parking. And so we added that in, and we're being able to do that and bring back some of the other things that we thought we'd have to wait longer for. So we see this sort of as a win-win-win situation.
Thank you, Councilmember Becker, and then Crumpler.
So just a comment here, and I appreciate what you're saying about needing the double counting. I kind of disagree with the logic, but I get the point you're making. With the split, and I believe in my ward, it's probably 70-30 against versus for from the people that have commented to me. But with that split, I really feel like it would have been a much better thing to do to come back and say, we'll take this whole grant and reduce this, given that there are so many taxpayers against this increase. I think it would have been better. I think it was expressed very well by our public commenter. So I just want to make that point that to me, it kind of slaps the large percentage of your population in the face when we get that grant and don't use it that way. I really think it should have been, we're going to commit to do our portion of the fundraising in addition to this grant. We're going to use the grant to offset what many taxpayers, maybe not all, but what many have said. So, and then the final comment, I don't want to rehash everything, but I'll just say this, that I am not against the good of the library in any way, shape, or form. I believe that there's a lot of that good that's available today, and I also don't believe in the tax increase. I think we could have saved money from other places to pay for this without a tax increase. That's why I'll still vote no.
Thank you. Did I, Councilmember Crumpler? Yep.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I just have a few comments. I've actually been impressed by the comments from people who have come before this council to advocate for library expansion. And I really do understand the arguments from other council members about wanting to be frugal with city revenue and dedicate the bulk of it to repairing infrastructure. You know, and I am committed to repairing neglected infrastructure in our city as well. I think that's really paramount. However, the expansion of the library is not just an addition of mere amenities that could be delayed any longer. For at least a decade, the library has needed updates, new resources to meet the needs of a growing community. From my perspective, the $5 million grant that Director Hamilton and her staff will provide represents an additional investment from the library. And I feel like they've done their part. I really believe it's time to support this proposed this proposed tax levy to fund the expansion of the Bloomington Public Library. It is the right thing to do for our city, and I will be voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kriebel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just don't know how we, reduce, I think, the levy from 17 million to 4.2 million and call that a slap in the face. I think we also have to recognize the people that support the library. And also, if we could have saved money from other places, I haven't heard of any ideas on that. I would also say, being good, being fiscally responsible, being good financial stewards means spending money appropriately that improves the lives of people in the community. We're talking about $850,000 a year, which is basically going to be a fraction of what we spend on public safety, pension, roads, and other infrastructure. Because we're investing in the library doesn't mean we're spending any less on roads, sewer, or other infrastructure. I'll also note that that $5 million grant will be gone if we do not expand the library. I am assuming that once the bond is paid off, then that will go off of the roll and the tax rate can be reduced. And also, I believe we have paid off bonds early, correct? All right. We also, as you can see on the chart earlier, about 3 cents of every property tax dollar goes to the library. We still have a lower tax rate than any comparable library in the community. That's even after this increase. And I think it's important that we don't lose sight. We've been talking about it for so long, but just some of the amenities. If you think about accessibility, the new entrance, sensory-friendly rooms, lower shelves, wider aisles, bigger spaces for children and teens, more computers and more computer labs, so that the people that I see in the library, some of my friends that are using the computer are using it for personal, for applying for jobs, things like that. They can now do that in a private room. It's things that other libraries already have, like makers labs, recording studios, discovery zones, additional things that kids can do. Like the public speaker talked about, more collaboration for our community so we can get together and try to resolve things. That's 3 large meeting spaces, up to 300 people now. We have, instead of 2 study rooms, we would have 9. Again, serving additional people, more than doubling parking. And maybe most importantly, it's future friendly, right? Flexible floor plan that can be modified as needs change, wider open spaces, movable shelves, and movable walls. So I wish this would have been voted on in the prior council, but I'm honored to be here to vote in favor of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ward.
Repeatedly over the last weeks and months, it seems like this has been posed as an either or kind of split. And I think that's an unnecessary dualism to say that either we spend the money on the library or we spend the money on roads and sewers. We are a resourceful, wise community, and we have the ability to do both. And I think that kind of false dualism is a sign that people need to spend more time in libraries, not less. Frankly, we have a duty to invest not only in physical infrastructure, and we do have a duty to invest in that, but we have a duty also to invest in intellectual infrastructure. Libraries contain the future, and they contain what we need as a community to be able to continue to have the smart talented, trained, professional people, people with the skills that we need in order to attend to all these other things and to develop the resources that we need to attend to all these other things. And for those reasons, I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you. Councilmember Bolin.
Yeah, I don't want to hash over everything. I've lived in this community 30 years. I've used the library. I have volunteered with the Friends of the Public Library for many years. Like many of the public commenters, my children grew up with the library. I'm very much an advocate for literacy and education. But what the people that I have heard speak in favor live in relatively affluent neighborhoods. Their income is well above the median income of this community, which is really only $55,000 annually per household. And they've been least affected by COVID and inflation. And those that oppose, especially specifically in Ward 2, I'm talking mainly about my constituents, their income is at or below the median income of $55,000. They live in lower income neighborhoods. They've been most affected by COVID, inflation, and unemployment. And access to the library in Ward 2 is almost zero because there is no public transportation. And also, raising taxes does affect affordability of household or housing. So there's been a lot of discussion about that on this council. And even if the rate stays the same and the EAV goes up, your property tax bill will increase. Is that correct? More money out of your pocket.
If your assessed value goes up? Is that
Pardon
what
me?
you're saying? Are you asking if someone's
I'm asking if that's actually true.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. What I believe you're asking is, so if the EAV goes up, then what we're levying is a dollar figure. So then that will be spread and the rate will lower. So you're not passing a rate tonight, you're passing a dollar figure and then the rate is calculated.
Well, yeah, I understand, but just in general, that the rate can stay the same, but the rate can stay the same, but if your assessed value goes up, you will end up paying more per year out of pocket.
Yes, that would happen
Okay,
in a
that's-
year.
I just want to get that information out there because sometimes it's not, that's not clarified. And also as an elected official, I have to be mindful that there's not just the library, although the library is a separate taxing body. It is part of the community. It's an asset. I agree. But I'm concerned that with all the other projects that have to be done, I want to be mindful of the possibility of future tax and fee increases. Okay. So I have a tendency to agree with what Gary Lambert said. I don't know how this would affect the requirement of 15 million, but I would prefer all of the grant money to go toward building and expanding the library in order to reduce reduce the cost to the taxpayer and offset that increase out of pocket depending on the EAV. So I would support that, but I don't think I could support what's being presented today. I would rather that the rate be lowered, like option number 3, so to speak. And I've also been kind of concerned, and I've talked about this, the lack of apparent fundraising what's on the books is 13,000 as opposed to the goal of 1.7 million. And I understand the catch-22 behind that, but I'm afraid that if using half of the grant, you are alleviating the need to continue with fundraising. I mean, correct me here.
We're definitely not doing that. And I'd also point out that there's a big difference between what's pledged, and I don't know where we are. But I, for example, have made a pledge. I haven't paid a dime yet, but that's not counted. And there's quite a few people who are in that category. It's including some large ones. I'd also say that at this point, I do think that once the council has finally said yes to this, that we're going to have a little easier time, because we had definitely in conversations with a number of people, they've said, well, you know, I want to support this, but the council has said no so many times before. I don't really want to give you money and then have it sit for years doing nothing. So we are definitely committed to continuing fundraising, and I think that you will see us do our best to continue doing that.
Now with the fundraising, you would be able to add more amenities.
I don't know.
You don't know.
I mean, it's part of the whole plan. It's part of the whole plan. I mean, the fundraising is part of that package. We're hoping to do what we have proposed. You know, and I think you yourself said it best in a few meetings ago, you know, that if we're going to do this, we should do it right. And we firmly agree with you on that statement.
Okay, thank you. We do need a motion to extend time.
Yes,
Mm,
please.
Can we do that while we still have a motion on the floor? Yeah, okay, all right.
I'll make that motion to extend the time.
Okay, and let's do 10 minutes, yes.
10 minutes.
I mean, at the very max, I won't even allow 10:01.
Second.
Okay, second, okay. Just voice vote.
I'll just do a quick roll call
Yeah,
for you.
yeah,
Councilmember Matthew.
Yes.
Councilmember Boland.
Yes.
Councilmember Motney.
Yes.
Councilmember Emig.
Yes.
Councilmember Becker. Councilmember Urban. Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Motney.
Thank you. So I don't see my vote this evening being at all against the library. I'm a former employee of a library, and I agree with my constituent who said it's a need. It's important. There are one aspects of what's being proposed here, and the tax increase is something that fundamentally I'm concerned with. But I'd like to talk about just briefly opportunity cost. When we talk about our obligation, and it's only been just a few short months that we sat in this room and listened to heart-wrenching stories of people who experienced raw sewage in their basements. So when I think about needs and I think about wants, and I think about comments that were made during that time about our ethical or even moral duty, I believe we have an absolute duty to make right the most basic needs that our citizens have in the form of our infrastructure, which includes sewers. It includes sidewalks that people aren't tripping and injuring themselves on. It includes street lights that work for reasons of public safety and others. It includes roads that aren't damaging cars, for which the city is incurring costs and paying claims. All of those things are important that we fund, and yet the majority of our conversations on the council really lean into projects that are discretionary, that aren't absolute things that we must do. So I just want us all to keep that in mind. And when we talk about how long this project has been pending, it was 14 years approximately, I think, since the last remodel. And in 20 years, we'll be continuing to pay for the increase that we're voting on tonight. Not us personally, but all of us who live in this community in the form of this increase. I agree that 100% of this money in goodwill should go toward the library that was received for the grant, offsetting the cost to our taxpayers in the form of tax increases. I appreciate everything that the library staff has done, and their passion to serve and outreach is commendable. I look forward to Also, finding opportunities in the future that I believe were missed in this work, and not by our library staff, but just more broadly across the community. Two of the main pieces of this include the makerspace and the recording studios, and also the need for conference center spaces. Just down the street here, we have another city-owned facility who has the opportunity and also on their proposal to build recording studio space and maker spaces there. We missed an opportunity to collaborate, to choose to make that investment in one place or the other, but not to diffuse the private funding resources that are being generated generously across our community to fund those efforts. We could have modified their recording studio to also meet the needs that the library staff identified in their proposal. I think those opportunities also exist. It goes really without saying much about that there are extensive properties owned by the city across our community, including downtown, where we could be creative in finding meeting spaces that we can make available to our community without adding the additional floor space that is going in that lane. We've got buildings that we could open up to share with our community and to provide an infrastructure to meet the civic need in that regard. Again, thank you for the work that's been done, and I appreciate all the back and forth and all the questions of mine that you've answered. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Emig and then Councilmember Matthew, and those are the last two.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you have 5 minutes for both of you, so 2.5, 250,
Hey,
250.
it's all good. I want to add a few things that some of which I've mentioned, some are new, and I do appreciate my colleagues' comments and this conversation. We do know from a lot of studies, and I would remind everyone of the Every Library Institute. They produce a library funding map that calculates a library's return on investment. And typically that averages over $5. When you look at the algorithm for our community and how they've determined that, it's $5.66. I also want to speak to why we would invest in a library during a time of economic uncertainty. Seems to me that's the most important time to do it. We learned during the pandemic how essential libraries are. There are also many studies indicating that their use increased dramatically in a variety of ways. And they do provide these direct services to people, including the access to technology that is so vital. I've spoken a little bit about how it's challenging to retrofit other spaces in the community to serve in the way that the library is structured to do. Several people have commented on why don't we use our local university and college libraries as an alternative? They're great libraries, but they're designed to serve those communities. They don't have extensive children's programming. And for a community card holder, they're not eligible for interlibrary loan, remote access to library databases, subscription services, e-journals, or library computers. So that they serve a purpose, but this kind of community-wide center is really essential. And finally, why not spend the money on sewers? We need to continue to dedicate funds that will help with our aging infrastructure. We have begun to do that. We will do more. These are not mutually exclusive endeavors, and fixing our sewers will remain a priority that will take ongoing planning and time. So allocating more funds right now at this moment, as I understand it from our engineers, will not make the process happen any faster. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Councilmember Matthew.
Thanks, Mayor. Julian, Jeannie, I just want to say thank you. You know, when we started this process, I don't even know how many years ago, I met with that first architect in a model listening session at the library. You know, this entire process has come forward, and it said that there was going to be an in from the city, and then there was going to be a fundraising and grant writing portion from the library and the Friends of the Library, and you have already started that and made significant inroads to that. I do count the grant that you brought forward as part of that, right? Because you said that you were going to cover $5 million with existing funds that you already had and more grants and more fundraising going forward. Well, you brought 6 million to the table already, so thank you for that. I also look forward to using the Friends of the Library as a model for our upcoming Friends of the Bloomington Police Department, where we fundraise to get new squad cars, and to the Friends of the Public Works, where we're fundraising for, filling potholes and things of that nature. Obviously, I jest, but that's, this is a department of the city that we've got to have a fundraising group for, to raise for the funds that we should just have for the library. We should just be able to allocate to that, because investment in the library is investment in ourselves. The outside world, when they look at Bloomington and or the whole community, they're looking at, what are we choosing to do to invest in ourselves? Where are things that we're deciding are important to work on as we go forward? A lot of business books will say you can tell the success of a community by looking at how many libraries they have and how many veterinary clinics that they have. What are the things that people are choosing to invest in as they go forward? And I see this investment in the library as part of that, that is going to show the outside world that we deem education and we deem, this expansion as something important, as necessary for us. So thank you for all the hard work that you guys have done. And I'm glad that we have finally gotten to this point in the conversation.
Okay, thank you. If you want to go ahead and vote now. Okay, the item passes 6-3. Madam Clerk, would you please announce the nays?
Councilmember Bolin, Councilmember Becker, and Councilmember Miney.
Okay, thank you. Do we do the proclamation now? Should we?
Yeah, you can do
okay.
it whenever you're ready.
Okay, all right. Let's do that. Okay, so earlier we deviated from the agenda a little bit, and we're going to come back to it and read the proclamation in memory of Barb Atkins. So I understand Diane is here, correct? Okay, if you want to step forward to the podium, I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation and then give you a chance to say a few words if you'd like. Okay, right there. Thank you. So this is dedicated to the memory of Barb Atkins, whereas the city reflects on the life and accomplishments of former Deputy City Manager Barbara J. Atkins, who passed away November 2020. And whereas former Deputy City Manager Atkins is fondly remembered for 32 years of dedicated service with the city of Bloomington. And whereas her influential career spanned from part-time police dispatcher, community relations coordinator, and community affairs specialist to the city's first African-American deputy city manager. And whereas Barb's guidance and support were instrumental to the Human Relations Commission, the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Luncheon, and other programs to support human rights. And whereas always ready to stand up for justice, Barb helped initiate the Not in Our Town movement locally, served on the Bloomington Housing Authority, and was active with the NAACP. And whereas to honor Barb's legacy of public service and city engagement, the city's administration's conference is dedicated to her and hereby named the Barb Atkins Conference Room. Now, therefore, I, Mboka Malambwe, Mayor of the City of Bloomington, Illinois, do hereby urge you to fondly remember Barbara J. Atkins, a true servant leader. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Only to say thank you. The tug at my heart is still tender when I speak of my sister. But you said it all. I want to say thank you to all of you so very much for making this happen, and I appreciate it. I'm sorry for being a little late getting here. With them 150 miles coming, I was turning the road up, but I got downtown. I didn't know where I was going. So Nikki got me in here on time, just in time to hear you all speak so well of Bloomington. And that's how my sister spoke of Bloomington. That's really where my sister's heart was, here in Bloomington, and working for the city and working with all of you all. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and my family. And we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope, Nikki, I hope she has an opportunity to see the conference room and maybe take a picture in there. Okay, awesome. I should have known, you're always on it. I got to sleep. Thank you, Leslie. Our next item on the agenda is item 8B, consideration and action on one, a resolution abating all or a portion of the taxes heretofore levied to pay debt service on certain obligation bonds of the city of Bloomington. And two, a resolution abating tax levy for rent payable and the lease agreement between the Public Building Commission, McLean County, and the city of Bloomington for the old Champion Building and the expansion of the parking garage. So two resolutions for the abatement of property taxes totaling $5,127,817.75 as requested by the Finance Department. So I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason for some comments, and then Scott.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Turn the floor over to Finance Director Scott Rathman. He has a very brief presentation before this comes back to Council as the action item.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, Council. This is really just an annual housekeeping resolution related to the levy. All of our debt that's issued, that's approved by Council, has a commitment to support the debt via the levy. We have only historically levied approximately $2 million annually for the bonds. We haven't increased that, so we need to abate the rest, basically a resolution to commit other revenues of the city to those purposes. I should have said next slide, please. Sorry. Next slide, please. So this is what I just reviewed. So essentially, we work with our bond counsel. We review all the ordinances that have been filed with the county, and we calculate all the debt that is captured in all those filings, and then what we're going to be levying, which really we only levy the debt that's associated with the general fund. I mean, all the tax levy is really related to the general fund, other than the library has its own personal own levy. So next slide, please. So our total debt payments are around 6.9 million. So we need to abate approximately that leaves the 1.8, roughly 1.9 million that's on the levy this year. That kind of goes up and down year over year, depending upon the next year's debt requirements. So at this point in time, next slide, please. I would recommend the 2021 tax levy abatements be approved. Any questions or discussion?
Are there any questions or a motion? Looks like we have a
I'll make
motion.
the motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Becker. And doesn't look like we have discussion, so if you want to go ahead and vote. Okay, the item passes. There are no nays to announce. Next item on the agenda is a presentation of the updated draft of the Americans with Disabilities Act Transition Plan as requested by Councilmember Ward. And I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason for some comments and Michael.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before we get to the presentation by Mr. Michael Hurt, our Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, he has been with the city for a few years and had been working on this. It had not been updated since 2015. But when he took over this newly created position in 2020, it became a priority. And I believe the council initiative was originated by Alderwoman Ward and supported by council. And it was to stress the importance of updating this plan. And this is culmination of that work where we actually had a deadline to present by the end of the year. And doing that in a very brief presentation, and then look to council for any additional steps or comments after the presentation. Michael?
Thank you, City Manager Gleason. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My presentation tonight is on the updates of the ADA transition plan. It has been hanging out there for a while in skeletal form, just asking to be fleshed out. So that's something that I started to do earlier on this year. And Councilman Ward's initiative was right on time, which helped put a fire under me to hurry and get that done. So that was great. Although that and has been hanging out there for a while, it really did not mean that the city of Bloomington was not supportive of ADA initiatives. We always have been. I have been doing the ADA accommodations for employees for the last 4 years. Pulled off once to look into a complaint against the city property that a resident had made. I went out, I did the investigation, and what I found out was that the city property was compliant with the ADA. Was because of a particular preference of that resident. So we have maintained our commitment to the ADA. Next slide, please. Very quickly, I want to probably take about 10 minutes at a time to run over the changes that have been made to the transition plan. First of all, just define what is the ADA, the purpose of this plan, to talk about the city of Bloomington's responsibilities to Title 1 and Title 2 of the ADA. Our mission statement, talk a little bit about the public input that we've received so far on the plan. Also talk about a major component of the plan, which is to have or to name the individuals who are responsible for the oversight and implementation of the plan, and a little bit about the schedule and cost for the ADA barrier removal. Next slide, please. The Americans with Disabilities Act became law in 1990. It's a civil rights law, and it prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities. And in terms of what it means for the city, all areas of our public life, including jobs, schools, transportation, public right-of-ways, our city facilities, our programs, activities that are sponsored by the city that are open to the general public, we need to make sure that there is access provided for individuals who may have a disability. Next slide, please. The purpose of this plan is to ensure that the city is complying with both Titles 1 and Titles 2 of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Respectively, that is Title 1, which deals with employment, and Title 2, public accommodation. The plan also calls for a periodic review of the city's self-evaluation of our buildings and of our programs, activities, and services to make sure that they are ADA compliant and they can be accessed by all of our citizens. Next slide, please. Title 1 of the ADA, as I've said, deals with employment. The city has worked to remove barriers that would deny any qualified individual the same access to employment opportunities and benefits as anyone else with disabilities. The Human Resources Department has worked especially hard to make sure that individuals who may have a disability that precludes them from applying for our positions online, they make exception and make the accommodation to do personal in-person applications for them, and also to assist them in the office with the computerized application process. Individuals who make it through the application process to the interview, they inform us that they need an accommodation to complete the interview. We also make sure that accommodation is made in compliance with Title I of the ADA. Next slide, please. Title II of the ADA prohibits discrimination in our public accommodations. In other words, our rights of way, our streets and sidewalks, our programs, activities, and anything that is sponsored by the city that is open to the general public, our facilities. We also have to make sure that the access is made for individuals who may have some sort of a disability, and regular access is a barrier to them. So we work very diligently to make sure that we abate those. Next slide, please. Our mission statement really says that we recognize that we have an obligation as the city of Bloomington, that we follow the tenets of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 as amended, and that we do establish and follow a transition plan to make sure that we comply with Title II of this federal law. Next slide, please. Due to COVID, we did not host a public hearing, and we wanted to be mindful of individuals who may not only have disabilities, but may also have some other comorbidities that would preclude them attending a large a meeting of that sort. So we sent out flyers and letters and emails to local disability advocacy groups, assisted living facilities, and individuals that we know to be advocates for the disabled in our community. Currently, there is also a survey on the city's website. It is still active, and we're still soliciting participation in that survey. Currently, I have about 50 people who have responded to it. And before I go any further, I want to make sure that we keep in mind that the transition plan, as we're looking at it tonight, is still in draft form. There's been some rumblings that perhaps a vote was going to be taken tonight. There will be no vote taken. We're merely presenting what we have so far. So this is a plan that, like I said, is in draft form. So we're still open and welcome any suggestions that those individuals may have, or that the council may have, that will give us the best transition plan we can get for our residents. Thanks. Some of the programs that were contacted the agencies that were contacted include DOORS, Mark First, Easter Seals, Life Seal, and the SOAR program. Next slide, please. Some of the public feedback that we have received so far from the online survey have included these top 3 responses in terms of people who answered the question, in what areas do you think the city needs the most improvement? Of course, number 1 is accessible pedestrian pathways and sidewalks, curb ramps. Also access to city-owned properties, street and crosswalk signals in particular, and accessible signage and wayfinding assistance, preferably downtown and in our buildings. And I have noticed, not on our properties, but on private properties, there is no Braille signage around the elevators. So those things of that nature is what they're talking about. Next slide, please. The plan also calls for individuals to be designated for plan oversight and plan implementation, a name and a number that an individual can contact if they have a concern or a complaint. Currently, I am the ADA coordinator for the city. My phone number is there. My job is oversight of the transition plan. Also, our Director of Public Works, Kevin Cothey, He is directly responsible for the implementation of the plan. Next slide, please. In 2015, the city hired a professional consulting firm, Faithful and Gould, to do an assessment of the conditions of our 49 city-owned facilities. In that assessment was also performed an ADA assessment, an accessibility compliance audit, if you will. These were performed on all 49 properties. The majority of the city properties passed the ADA portion. Faithful and Gould listed out some places, or I'm sorry, some facilities that did need some upgrades in terms of the ADA. Next slide, please. So these, the assessment listed out, it identified some physical obstacles to city properties. It talked about the things that needed to be abated in order to make these properties accessible, and it asked for a schedule in achieving them. I contacted the departments that were listed as having facilities that were not compliant. Found out that most of those complaints had been abated. And on the next slide, please, these are the remaining properties that still need modification. As you can see, most of them are de minimis in terms of what the cost is. I've spoken to facilities, I've spoken to Public Works, and we've come up with a target year, 2021, 2022, where most of these can be abated. Since the transition plan is a living document, it will be updated periodically online, so individuals can always see exactly where we are in terms of what we've accomplished, how far we have to go. And if there are any questions, again, our contact information is there, and they can get in touch with us directly to find out any additional questions. As you can see, most of these upgrades that they're asking for are modifications to restrooms. They came into play with the ADA 2010 modification plan. So again, these last few modifications are what we're looking at. But again, since the ADA also is a progressive document, a progressive organization in terms of the requirements change periodically. From year to year, there may be a different update. So we have to be prepared to make whatever adjustments they're asking for. As the city expands and has new subdivisions, or we bring in new companies, all of this will be figured into the ADA transition plan to make sure that we remain compliant and that our accessibility for all of these new divisions or places of employment are actually accessible to everyone. Next slide, please. In terms of the sidewalk, the city has 423 miles of sidewalk. The Public Works Department created a chart which basically states the condition that most of these sidewalks were in. I cannot tell you at this moment how much, or I'm sorry, how many more miles of sidewalk there are to complete. But when I think about 423 miles of sidewalk, that is roughly the distance from Peoria, I'm sorry, from Bloomington to Little Rock, Arkansas. Next slide, please. The funding program for the sidewalk program has been very consistent. We are in entering year 6 of that plan. And as you can see from the chart, for the last 2 years, the city has allocated $2 million for ADA accessibility issues in terms of our streets, sidewalks, and installation of ramps. So the community can actually see that the city has made a serious commitment in fulfilling that obligation. Next slide, please. The transition plan going forward, this will include an assessment of our programs, services, and activities, and also checking for ADA compliance. The plan is to review or to have a self-evaluation at least every 3 years, or as the need arises. That need may be that someone makes a complaint and we find out that complaint is valid. So we may need to get to perform some work in terms of accessibility on one of our properties. Or the ADA comes up with a new standard that we need to comply with. But other than that, every 3 years is is the target to review all of our properties, our programs, our services and activities to make sure that they are compliant and accessible. Next slide, please. One of the important things to remember, again, that a transition plan is a living and evolving document. As I said before, this will be placed out on our website. Any updates to the transition plan will be there for all to see. If there are questions, concerns, again, you'll have my information and Kevin's information to get clarity on any of that. Last slide, please. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Try to answer those for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael, for a great presentation. Are there any questions? We do have, I kept track of time. We have about 10 minutes for questions and comments. Sure.
Yeah.
Councilmember Ward.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this draft. I really appreciate your work on this and for getting us a document that we can begin to work on. I appreciate you emphasizing the point that this is a draft. The last draft was sitting out there since 2015 and it stayed that way. My hope is that we can move this forward, but I do want to emphasize that it's a draft. And so we are still seeking input and you know, the point of a draft is to get more input, but we've got a document in front of us now that we can work on. I do have some areas that I want to highlight that I have some questions about, some things that have been raised to me from members of the community and some thoughts that I have on my own. One of them has to do with the need to have a public hearing, frankly. And to do that, now that we have a document for people to look at and talk about and comment on, we need to solicit that. And I would like to see that happen as soon as possible in the new year. I think we also need to now run this draft past public groups, disability groups, that so that they can comment on something that you know is a physical thing to comment on at this point. I think that also needs to happen before this council can take any action to actually implement the draft and turn it from a draft into a final document that we actually move forward with. I don't know what kind of a time frame would be necessary for that kind of thing to happen. I would love to see it happen before the first quarter is over of the new year in terms of getting comments and really finalizing this. I don't know if that's realistic.
Yeah, I think it is realistic. It's doable.
That would be awesome. So that's a process piece. Some of the issues that I think really do need to be attended to. I've been hearing from some folks that the grievance process that's outlined in the draft at this point could use some streamlining, could become a little simpler. And I'd like it if we could talk about that and look into that. I'm also wondering if I appreciated you pointing out that the assessment that was done in 2015 by, I can't remember the name of the company.
Faithful and Gould.
Faithful, like, okay, Faithful and Gould. 2015 feels like a long time ago. And I have to think that things have changed in the last 6-7 years. And I'm wondering what it would take to get a reassessment and look again at our properties. I don't know, you know, what that would cost or what that would take, but that's something that comes to my mind. I also just can't quite get my head around the idea that we just can't get a definitive answer after numerous requests, it seems like, on how many miles of sidewalk we still need to work on. We have 423 miles. People can tell us that, but my goodness, do we have 10 more miles to work on, or do we have 300 more miles to work on? And I don't know that, I mean, I'm not saying that you have that answer, but somebody's got to know that. And if they don't know it, we need to figure it out, because we're only doing 2 or 3 miles a year. And that's going to take us a long time if we still have 300 miles to work on. So those are some of my main issues, just off the top of my head and in conversation briefly with some folks. But I appreciate you giving us the document that we can work on now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Motney.
Would you mind to pull up the sidewalk rating slide again? Does this help in response to Councilmember Ward's question? As we look at this and we see, roughly, 120, 125 miles of ratings in fair or below?
I'm not sure. That would actually be a question for Public Works.
And I'll jump in real quick. That's a 2015 document that we need to update, and we'll
Okay.
definitely get that back to council. First council meeting in January 10th.
Okay. And it would be helpful to me to have a statistic of cost per mile paved of the sidewalks, because I think, to your point, in our discussion last week, we talked about the fact that 2.6 miles of sidewalks had been improved as a part of the work in Public Works over the prior year at a cost of 1.2 million, roughly. So, I mean, that would just be helpful for us to really kind of understand prospectively the amount of resources that are going to be required to make these improvements. Because, I mean, at that cost, I mean, we're talking about roughly 460,000 per mile paved of improvement in sidewalk. So I'd love to see that data.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Michael, thanks so much for coming before us this evening. I really appreciate the work you've done. And I want to echo Councilmember Ward's notion that I think this is a great start, and I look forward to working with you, to move it forward. I think I also would say a public hearing is absolutely critical. And I understand completely, that COVID has limited your ability, to collect some of the data that you would like, to have, to make more informed decisions. And I hope that we can, move into this early in 2022. And I wonder if you could just maybe quickly, give us a sense of what are some of the next steps that you and your staff will take to move this forward so it can come to council in a timely fashion.
One of the things we planned to do was, when we mentioned that self-evaluation, there is a self-evaluation that can be done by our employees. They are the ones who best know the facilities and also whatever programs, services that are offered in these facilities, and they are the best ones to tell us if there are any barriers that would preclude someone from taking part. So that will be done in 2022. In terms of the sidewalk, I have heard and I understand some of the issues that Public Works runs into. Even some of the sidewalks that were listed as good, you can go out there and there can be a tree root that is moving part of the sidewalk that's right next to the good one. So you're putting good money after bad in order to repair that. So there are so many mitigating factors with this. I didn't really push them because they really couldn't give me an answer right then. But they are working on getting us an answer in terms of how many more miles that sorry, can't hear me? It's this thing, I'm sorry. So they're working on getting us an estimate of how many more miles to go. And of course, since we are in year 6 of the sidewalk program, we're not quite yet at 50% to complete it. So the anticipation is, of course, it's going to be a longer time and additional funds to accomplish it. And that's just, you know, the nuts and bolts of it, the way I see it.
And I guess just one other question, and I'm certainly you've thought about this, and if we can't, you know, get a public hearing that's face to face, certainly we could do something, you know, on Zoom
Virtual.
or some other
Mhm.
other platform that would allow a wide diversity of participants
Yeah.
to weigh in as well.
What I can do is I can poll these agencies that represent our disabled community to find out what their preference is. I agree, maybe more people would be able to attend if it is virtual, and we can hear their concerns.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. So Michael, thank you very much
You're
for all the great work you've done. And we look forward to hearing about next steps and maybe in a city manager update or something like that, when you have time to, you know, confer with other folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is city manager's discussion. City Manager Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're actually going to do the Finance Director's report.
Oh,
It's
that's right.
it's very
Sorry.
brief because typically this is delivered at the fourth Monday, and a lot of the December receipts have not been received yet, but we did not want to forego the opportunity to at least have a brief presentation. Scott?
Thank you, sir. Yes, it's too early in the month for us to have the November financials ready. Local taxes aren't due until the 25th of the month following the prior. So the October taxes for food and beverage, locomotive fuel tax, et cetera, are due on the 25th of November. And then we had the holiday in there. And so by the time, you know, the second council meeting usually is at the later half of the month, and we've had the bank reconciliations completed. But we saw this as an opportunity to kind of highlight some of our revenues and how we track them. We've done this before. We've amended the exhibit for revenue after some discussions last month. We want to go through that and then show you a couple of revenue lines that typically, since we're kind of trying to restrict the size of some of those exhibits, we're going to show you a couple other revenues we thought might be of interest. So next slide, please, Ryan. Thank you. So first of all, starting out with the format of this exhibit. As we discussed last month, going into FY 2022, when we were adopting the budget, you know, COVID was still very strong. It's strong now, of course, as well, but the impact of the revenues was still unknown. So we took many of the revenue categories down from a budgetary standpoint. So we've been talking about how we need to keep that in context related to the budget variance then for year to date. So local motor fuel tax was a subject of that discussion last month. That category is not completed yet, so that's not on here, but I still want to highlight the format changes. So we'll use a home rule sales tax as the example. So last month, we showed that we had taken FY 2022 from the FY 2021 budget down by roughly 6%. You can see that we took it almost down by $1.4 million. Now zooming over to the left, you can see that our total year-to-date budget is 11 million. We're at almost 14 million, $2.9 million over budget. And you can see we've collected 6 payments. We've included the December payment in this just because this is a snapshot. That's why I put at the top through 12/8/21. So we've got the most recent sales tax numbers in here, whereas typically you wouldn't see that until January. So just using straight line math here, you know, this is not taking into account seasonality halfway through the year. So, you know, half of the $1.4 million reduction would be 700,000. We're showing, you know, that we're $2.9 million ahead. So kind of like in, you know, apples to apples terms, maybe we'd only be $2.2 million ahead. So that's just some rough math just to throw at you to put it in context. We'll spend a little bit more time on that subject next month when we're looking at local motor fuel, where we do think, you know, it's showing a positive year to date, but it's definitely under from the 21 trajectory that we were, or 20 trajectory that we were experiencing before COVID. So having said that, I want to jump down to the bottom. Oh, and also we moved the months collected, number of months over to the left, so feel that the flow of the exhibit might be a little bit better. So annual budget, the year-to-date months collected, the applied year-to-date number of months against the budget to show a year-to-date budget number, and then our actual through that period, the variance, and then the compared to prior year. So hopefully the flow of the exhibit makes a little bit more sense in this format. So rolling down to the bottom, packaged liquor is actually one of our local taxes. So this is really still the October numbers or the September numbers, but I wanted to show it tonight. We don't talk about it typically. It used to be on the exhibit. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon, you know, from COVID, you know, this really shot up, you know, during some of the restrictions and mitigations. It's still trending pretty high for us. You can see it's a $1.4 million annual budget. You know, it's $52,000 over year to date, 8.8% over. And you can see it over in the far right column. We even took that budget up by $100,000 over the prior year just because it's been significantly increasing over time. Vehicle use tax. I think everyone's aware of the issues, you know, related to microchips and et cetera in cars and the limited inventory. The cars that are out there are selling. They're selling for large dollar values. You'll see the tax rate here is 0.75% that's applied by the city. That's going to be in the exhibit we're going to go over in just a moment. But this category is doing extremely well. I'll start in the far right this time. We left it flat, the budget flat, a budget of 1.1 million. And you can see that year-to-date budget variance is $233,000 over budget year-to-date. So that category is performing very well. And then building permits is really not a tax, but we want to throw it in here because it's really, you know, a positive indicator of what's going on here that we've been discussing related to Rivian, et cetera. Building permits, we kept it flat over the prior year. It's up $75,000 over our budget, 14.4%. Had a lot of building permits come in the month of November. So we're seeing that activity. We were just talking about the levy and the EAV, et cetera. So we're seeing that kind of showing itself in this building permits category. So we'll roll back to the same categories next month, but we'll be using the same format, especially focusing on local motor fuel tax related to that prior year comparison and where we might be thinking from a long-term standpoint where the trajectory is taking us. Next slide, please. So this is some of the tracking worksheets that we utilize. There's actually a whole section on these that show, I think, 15 to 20 years of history. So in the far left column, I won't go through every one of these, but some of these larger categories, we do seasonalize the budget. So you can see each month there's a different value, and that's based on the historical trends. We can't do that with the entire city budget of 4,000 plus accounts. So like our year-to-date budget to actual, the seasonality kind of impacts that. It's hard to get a kind of a feel for it. We're a certain percentages through the year. But on our revenues, we do track these, or we do budget them manually in Excel, and then compare those to the year-to-date to show the variances. So home rule, we're doing very well. You know, I like to highlight, you know, we're still being subjected to the 1.5% state fee for the application of that service that was new a few years ago, was 2% for a while. So at least it's 1.5% now. Next slide, please. Packaged liquor, you can see at the top, I forgot to mention this on home rule. Home rule sales tax is 2.5%. Packaged liquor is 4%. Again, a seasonalized budget for us. You know, you can see that the month of December, you know, that's due to the holiday season, budgeted $157,000. Year to date, we're 52,000 over, so doing very well. Again, just showing you, trying to show council and the community some of the tracking that we do in finance, how we seasonalize some of the revenues so that we can get a better feel for that revenue activity as it's coming in, so that we can make, you know, better decisions related to expenditures. Next slide, please. Vehicle use tax. Just, you know, an interesting component of this, you know, the town of Normal actually administers our vehicle use tax. We administer food and beverage for them. It's 0.75%. Many of our residents, they wonder sometimes how they get charged. Well, the town of Normal gets a list from the Secretary of State related to purchases and registrations by address, and that's how people get charged here locally for the vehicle use tax. Doing very well. We also seasonalize this budget. $232,000 over year to date. That's just been a phenomenal category experienced by the city, showing a good local economy at work there, pent up demand, if you will, but very positive, however you want to look at that. Next slide, please. And then building permits. This is just a similar tracking. Wanted to highlight here, you know, if you go down to the October, November months, you know, we were under, then kind of flat for June, or for May, you know, for June there. And then as you come down, you can see the activity really started to kick up. October, $25,000 over our monthly estimate. November, 58,000. And then if you jump over like 5 or 6 columns, you can see the month-to-date variance, what those translate, we're 34% over for those months and 98% over for the month of November. We've had some significant activity related to building and construction permits here at the city. It's just been very impressive to kind of watch that ripple effect related to Rivian and here in the community. Next slide, please. And we typically have this on the front. I'm just kind of talking about formatting this evening, taking that opportunity. Usually have this on the front page. We're going to roll it to the back. This just shows where we keep these reports online for anyone that wants to follow along during the meetings. Try to post them. Councilmember Crable brought this up a couple meetings ago. We attempt to have these posted prior to the meeting so that the residents can follow along. So I'll pause and see if there are any questions or comments related to that quick overview.
Okay. Questions? Okay, none. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So now to city manager's discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple of slides, and I have just a couple of additional comments. Holiday Hop and Shop, December 16th. It's this week, and that's 4 to 7. Again, the downtownbloomington.org app is a great resource. Next slide. Yep, the indoor holiday farmers market, December 18th. Again, more information can be found on the city's website. I'm not quite sure what the deadline is for orders. By any chance, any of the city staff know? We will get a message out via social media tomorrow if we have not passed that deadline. And then real quick, just a couple of additional comments before I turn this back over to the mayor and the council. Just with the storm event that we had here in this community and region, but especially across the Midwest and the South. Thoughts and prayers go out to those communities for the tremendous loss that they've suffered and the long road of recovery that they've just begun. Next item, I'm going to share this with council tomorrow and then the community on Wednesday. But if everyone recalls our Budget 101 series that we started last year, it was always going to be a work in progress where we're going to update this. Our very own Catherine Murphy, great voice for narrating an updated version. So that's going to go live on Wednesday. Council will get that tomorrow. I do seriously encourage the community to look at these, little bite-size portions regarding our budget. We're all stewards of the taxpayer dollars up here, and it's a great resource and explanation for municipal budget process. And then as we close 2021, excited to bring forward at the February Committee of the Whole the accomplishments that we've done in 21. We've accomplished, quite a bit in 21 and definitely more to do in 22 and excited about that. And then lastly, this will be our last chance council meeting wise until the next one, January 10th of 22. We just want to wish the community happy holidays and safe and blessed holidays. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, City Manager Gleason. And I do too want to express our condolences to many of the communities who have suffered from the recent storm events. And I know City Manager has gone through it in Washington, and it's certainly a very difficult and long road to recovery. Want to remind everyone about the bench dedication on Saturday for Barb Atkins in front of the McLean County Museum of History. And on January 10th, I will be out of the country. So yours truly here, Jamie Matthew, will be Mayor Pro Tem. So, and I will be back on the 11th. And also wanted to wish everybody a happy holiday. We have accomplished quite a bit in 2021, and I definitely encourage everyone to enjoy the holidays and have a good time. We have a lot to be proud of, a very resilient community. 2 years with COVID, but yet we're still making great strides in what we're doing. So very, very, very excited about 2022. And with that, I'll turn it over to council members to see if there's anybody who has anything to add. Councilmember Ward.
Yeah, just briefly, I want to put in a plug for the longest night interfaith service that will be happening on Thursday, the 16th. The holidays can be a hard time for lots of people, and the faith communities recognize that. And so they're holding a service of hope and healing. Actually, three opportunities. One is at noon at the Moses Montefiore Temple on Robin Hood Lane in Bloomington, at 6:30 p.m. at Normal First United Methodist Church on School Street. And then after the 16th, you can take a look at the virtual service link at normalfirst.org. So that's Thursday, the 16th.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Boland.
Yeah, I just want to give a heads up. I'm the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council is meeting on Friday, but I don't want to wait until until next year to share this. Mark Chotry, who is the superintendent for DeWitt, Livingston, Logan, and McLean counties, they are going to bring forward an initiative, and it's called the Bridge Academy, and it's specifically for adolescents who have either been hospitalized or to prevent hospitalization in a small school setting. They can stay there a minimum of 30 days, but they can stay there indefinitely until they feel and the family feels that they can be reintegrated into their original school. This is a big deal for the community. It's part of the continuum of care, the wraparound services for the mentally ill. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And do we have an additional thing to add about the market?
I did get an update from the Assistant Director, Kimberly Smith. The market this Saturday is an in-person market, so there's no online ordering required. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And at this point, seeing no other, I will ask for a motion to enter into executive session per section 2 of C21 of 5 ILCS 120 to complete a semi-annual review of closed session minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Boland, second by Councilmember Emig. Do we do a voice vote or? Okay,
Can I?
roll call. Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was roll call, but just.
Yeah,
double
that's what
checking.
I
Okay,
meant. Voice.
Councilmember Matthew,
Yes.
Councilmember Boland.
Yes.
Councilmember Motney,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig.
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Councilmember Urban,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Crable,
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Council is entering executive session per Hey, I didn't want to say it on the mic, but I'm a little worried about a coup. Yeah, let's just do it. Are we ready? Okay, all right. I'm gonna go ahead and call to order the executive session of the city.
We're back live. We're not gonna go to closed session.
Oh, okay, okay. I thought you were gonna share and, okay.
So you want me to?
Sure, okay. So, let me see here. So just go back live then?
Yeah, we're back live. We're not gonna go into closed session, waiting on some more information. And so now we just need a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Boland, second by Councilmember Ward. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody.